Welcome. This is the UCSD Online Introduction to Patient-Oriented Research course, CLRE 250R. And my name is Martin Hoenigl. I'm an Associate Professor of Medicine at the Division of Infectious Diseases and Global Public Health here at UCSD. And I will talk today about complex trial designs. I will start off with giving an overview about standard parallel design and then really jumping into the different complex trial designs in this overview lecture. In addition, there will be separate lectures for all the different complex trial designs. And online on Canvas, you will also find an additional set of exercises where you basically are presented with a research question and then need to choose the appropriate complex trial design for this particular research question. So it's not multiple choice, it's really a question, a longer research question, a more detailed research question, and you choose the appropriate complex trial design. Starting off with the overview of the phases of clinical trials. And this is, of course, something that's very important throughout your career. So basically, we have 4 phases of clinical trials, with phase 1 really, explorative to explore possible toxic effects and determine tolerance, safety of the intervention, often in healthy individuals, and also determine the tolerated dose for a study drug. You see the sample size here, 10 to 30, relatively small sample size. Phase 2 comes after phase 1, and here it's really to determine if a treatment has a therapeutic effect, or if there's any hope for benefits to outweigh the risks that we saw, the safety risks that we saw in phase 1. And again, we'll be seeing, of course, in phase 2. Here we expect about 20 to 50 patients, depending on the trial. Phase 3 then is to compare treatment to the standard therapy or a control or placebo if no standard therapy exists. These are the large clinical trials we are reading in New England Journal of Medicine or the Lancet, and these really are the trials where after completion of a trial and showing superiority or non-inferiority, a new drug gets approved by regulatory affairs of the FDA or in Europe, the EMA, for example. So the typical number of patients here is much larger. This also already depends on the effect size, of course, how much effect are you expecting to see. But it's 100 to 1,000 patients in median. It can be sometimes larger than that as well. And then after approval, we come to the phase 4 trials, which is really the goal to obtain long-term, large-scale information on morbidity and also late effects. This is also called post-marketing study. And this is usually conducted in hundreds or thousands of patients post-study approval. The benefit of such a phase 4 trial is also that it can basically show us how well our phase 3 results that are often conducted in a clearly defined cohort with a number of inclusion and exclusion criteria would basically translate to the real world. So in terms of designing a standard parallel trial, there is different ways, of course. For example, if no standard therapy exists, we would basically randomize people into either receiving experimental therapy or no therapy or a placebo control. If a standard therapy exists, in contrast, it would not be ethical to not give therapy to the controls. So we would need to randomize participants into receiving experimental therapy versus standard of care therapy. We could also test combination therapy, where we give basically standard therapy plus placebo versus standard therapy plus the experimental drug. We could also test timing, where we first start off with basically placebo and only later give the standard therapy, versus giving the standard therapy right from the beginning. The same could, of course, also be done at the end if we are interested in timing. How long is the treatment needed? And we could test also switching, if switching is feasible, where we basically start off everyone with a standard therapy and then randomize people to either staying on standard therapy or switching to experimental therapy. So what does a standard parallel design look like? We have a population, and this population gets randomized into receiving here intervention 1 versus placebo, and here we even have a second intervention. So we can have multiple arms. Standard parallel design doesn't mean it has to be 2 arms. It can be more arms. Here it's 3 arms. So basically we have 3 different intervention 1, intervention 2, and the placebo arm, 3 different arms, and then we are measuring in all 3 groups the outcome. The advantage here is really that it's as simple, a single treatment is given to each group and a fixed number of patients is involved. So really for most studies a standard parallel design is used, and it's the most used design for sure. Because, but when thinking about the optimal study for a standard parallel design, and this is not exclusive basically, it would be the appropriate design if a treatment is curative. That's definitely something. If a treatment is curative, we would mostly use a standard parallel design, although we also use standard parallel designs for other conditions where treatment is not curative. If the duration of the treatment is long, that would also be an indication to use a standard parallel design. If the effect of one treatment is different when it follows another treatment, this would also be a reason, for example, to not use a crossover design, but stay with a standard parallel design. If a large number of treatments are to be compared with multiple arms, that would also be indicative of using a standard parallel design. And if the number of subjects available for a trial is unlimited. During the next lectures, I will walk into alternative trial designs, complex trial designs. And each of my following lectures will focus on one of these. One will focus on the run-in period, then I will focus on advanced randomized parallel designs, in particular the factorial designs, including other 2x2 designs with factorial and 2 interventions and 2 outcomes. Then the cluster design, the matched group design, and then at the end the crossover design and the stepped wedge design. And I invite you hereby to watch these lectures, and then at the end, once you watched all these lectures and did the exercises that I also present in these lectures, also do exercise 2, which is uploaded on Canvas. Thank you.